A casino security boss thinks he's humiliated some washed-up nobody who dared to help an elderly woman being cheated at blackjack. The arrogant thug drags the quiet stranger through the crowded casino floor, mocking him in front of hundreds of customers. But what the security boss doesn't realize is that this soft-spoken man in the expensive suit is Mike Tyson himself. The casino supervisor just made the worst mistake of his pathetic career, publicly humiliating a man who spent decades destroying anyone who crossed him. While the elderly woman watches in horror and the crowd gasps in recognition, the legendary heavyweight champion stays calm, his massive hands relaxed at his sides. The security boss keeps running his mouth, not understanding that he just declared war on someone who's never lost a fight that truly mattered. The other guards start backing away as they recognize those unmistakable features, but their boss is too drunk on power to notice the terror in their eyes. What happens when you humiliate Iron Mike in front of innocent people he's trying to protect? Will the casino thug survive learning why some legends should never be crossed? What happened next would haunt the security boss for the rest of his miserable existence. Before we jump back and tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The rain drummed against the windows of Thunder Mountain Casino as a well-dressed man stepped through the main entrance on this quiet Tuesday evening in October. At 57, he moved with surprising grace for his size, his navy suit expensive but understated. The casino hummed with its usual mix of local seniors and middle-aged gamblers, slot machines chiming their electronic songs. The man surveyed the gaming floor with sharp eyes, taking in everything: the dealers, the floor supervisors, the security cameras mounted like silent sentries. His massive hands, scarred from decades of combat, hung relaxed at his sides as he walked purposefully toward the blackjack tables. "Good evening," he said quietly, settling into a chair at a $5 minimum table. The elderly Asian dealer looked up with tired eyes. "Welcome to Thunder Mountain. I'm Mrs. Chun," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent. Her hands moved efficiently as she shuffled the cards, but he noticed the way she glanced nervously toward the pit boss station. "Just call me Mike," he replied, his distinctive voice warm but controlled. He placed a modest bet and watched her deal. The cards came smooth and professional, but her shoulders carried tension like a heavy coat. As they played, Mike tipped generously. $5 on a $15 win, 10 on a $20 hand. Mrs. Chin's eyes brightened with each tip, but the nervousness never left her movements. She kept checking the clock, watching the floor supervisors, jumping slightly when footsteps approached their table. "You have family here?" Mike asked during a quiet moment between hands. "2 grandchildren," she said, her face softening. "College is expensive. This job," she trailed off, dealing another hand with practiced efficiency. Mike played conservatively, watching everything. He noticed how the security cameras focused on certain players, how floor supervisors hovered near elderly gamblers like vultures circling prey. The whole operation felt wrong, predatory in ways that made his jaw tighten. After exactly 1 hour, Mike collected his modest winnings, $43 on a $20 buy-in. He placed a $50 tip on Mrs. Chin's tray, watching. Her eyes widened. "Thank you for the pleasant evening," he said, standing to leave. Mrs. Chin looked around quickly, then leaned forward. "Thank you, Mr. Tyson," she whispered, recognition finally dawning in her tired eyes. Mike paused, giving her a knowing smile that held both warmth and something else. Something that suggested patience was a virtue he'd learned to master, but not one he'd practice forever. He nodded once and walked toward the slot machine section, his observant eyes already cataloging the next phase of whatever was happening here. The hunt was just beginning. Mike moved through the slot machine section, like a predator studying prey, except here the roles were reversed. The elderly players feeding coins into the hungry machines were the victims, and the casino itself was the predator. He purchased black coffee from the cafe and positioned himself with a clear view of the gaming floor. What he witnessed made his blood simmer with controlled rage. Floor supervisor Derek Castellano, a thin man in his 30s with slicked back hair and a cheap suit, guided confused elderly players toward the highest-stakes slots. "These machines are running hot tonight, Mrs. Patterson," Mike heard him tell an 80-year-old woman with a walker. "You'll want to play maximum coins to really win big." A cocktail waitress with calculating eyes deliberately overserved a clearly intoxicated elderly woman who swayed as she fed $20 bills into an unforgiving machine. The woman's purse lay open, revealing a small pharmacy of pill bottles and a social security check. But the slot machines themselves told the real story. Mike watched three specific units that seemed programmed for psychological torture. The same sequence played out repeatedly. Elderly players would hit two cherries, then watch the third reel slow dramatically before stopping one position away from the jackpot. Near wins. Hope followed by crushing disappointment, followed by another desperate coin. The worst case sat hunched over a poker machine near the back wall. Frank Morrison, 68 years old with Vietnam veteran printed on his weathered baseball cap, muttered to himself as he fed his last bills into the machine. His gnarled hands shook as he pressed the buttons, watching his Social Security money vanish digit by digit. "Come on," Frank whispered. "Betty needs her medicine. Just one good hand." The machine teased him with pairs that never improved, straights that never completed. Mike calculated quickly. Frank had lost over $1,200, money he clearly couldn't afford to lose. Security cameras tracked every transaction while Frank's hopes died one credit at a time. When the machine finally ate Frank's last dollar, the old veteran sat motionless for a long moment. Then his shoulders began to shake. Mike watched Frank stumble toward the exit, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. The casino staff barely glanced at the broken man walking past. To them, Frank was just another successful transaction. Setting down his untouched coffee, Mike followed the veteran outside into the cool October air. Frank sat in an old pickup truck, head buried in his hands, shoulders convulsing with silent sobs. Mike approached the driver's window and tapped gently on the glass. Frank looked up, startled, his red-rimmed eyes meeting those of the imposing stranger standing in the parking lot rain. "Frank Morrison," Mike said, reading the name embroidered on the veteran's jacket. "Mind if we talk?" Frank wiped his eyes quickly, embarrassed to be caught crying. "Do I know you?" "Name's Mike Tyson," he said simply, his distinctive voice immediately recognizable even through the truck's window. Frank's eyes widened. "The Mike Tyson? Holy shit. Sorry, sir. I mean, wow." He rolled down the window completely. "What's a legend like you doing talking to an old fool like me? Watching an old soldier get robbed," Mike replied. "How much did you lose in there?" Frank's face crumpled. $1,247. "My wife Betty, she's got diabetes. Needs insulin, test strips, doctor visits. Medicare don't cover everything." He shook his head. "I thought maybe I could win enough for her prescriptions this month. Instead, I just threw away our grocery money." Mike's jaw tightened. "Frank, I think you and I need to go back inside. I want to show you something." Despite his embarrassment, Frank couldn't refuse Iron Mike Tyson. They walked back through the casino entrance together, Frank still starstruck, Mike focused and purposeful. "Watch," Mike said quietly, positioning them where they could observe the gaming floor. "See that dealer at table 4? Watch his shuffle." Frank squinted, following Mike's gaze. The dealer's hands moved in practiced patterns, but Mike's trained. "I caught the subtle false shuffles, the way certain cards stayed positioned at the top of the deck." Now watch the pit boss with the elderly lady at the slots. Derek Castellano was leaning over an 78-year-old woman with silver hair, encouraging her to increase her bet. "You're so close to the bonus round, Mrs. Walsh. Double your bet, and you'll hit it for sure." The woman, Dorothy Walsh, looked confused. "I don't understand. I thought I won that last hand." "No, ma'am. You were one short," Derek said impatiently. "Trust me, I've been doing this for years." Dorothy studied her cards again, clearly doubting herself. "But I counted 21 exactly. Look, lady, do you want to play or not?" Derek's voice carried an edge of aggression that made other players glance over nervously. Mike had seen enough. He stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the blackjack table. "Young man," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had once commanded heavyweight championships. "That's no way to treat a lady." Derek Castellano spun around, his hand still gripping Dorothy Walsh's frail arm. The sudden confrontation drew curious stares from nearby players, slot machines continuing their electronic symphony in the background. "Who the hell are you two?" Derek began, then stopped as he took in Mike's imposing presence. The pit boss tried to puff out his chest, but next to Mike's broad shoulders and thick neck, he looked like a child playing dress-up. "This is Mike Tyson," Dorothy said quietly. Recognizing the distinctive voice and features that had been legendary for decades, Derek's attitude shifted immediately, but not toward respect. Instead, a cruel smile spread across his thin lips. Well, well, the great Mike Tyson. He spoke loud enough for surrounding players to hear. "What's a washed-up has been doing in our casino? Shouldn't you be at home counting your brain cells?" Mike remained perfectly still, his hands relaxed at his sides. "The lady is right about her hand. I watched you miscount. She had 21 exactly." "Oh, you watched?" Derek's voice dripped with sarcasm. "With those scrambled brains of yours, you probably can't count to 10 anymore." Other elderly players began gathering around, sensing drama. Frank Morrison stood behind Mike, his veteran's instincts recognizing the calm before a storm. "He's right," said an elderly man with thick glasses. "I saw it too. She had 21. "So did I," added another woman. "And yesterday, my machine ate my credits when I hit 3 bars." Dorothy found her voice. "This has been happening for weeks. Dealers making mistakes, machines not paying what they should." Derek's face flushed red. "Listen here, you old bats. Careful," Mike said, the single word carrying enough menace to freeze Derek mid-sentence. "Choose your next words very carefully." That's when Vincent Romano arrived. The casino security supervisor pushed through the growing crowd with 3 guards flanking him. Tall and lean with predatory eyes, Romano surveyed the scene with obvious displeasure. His expensive suit and gold jewelry marked him as someone who'd prospered from the casino's operation. Romano recognized Mike immediately, but showed no respect. Instead, his eyes lit up with opportunity, a chance to publicly humiliate a celebrity who might threaten their operation. "Look what we got here," Romano announced loudly, ensuring everyone within 50 feet could hear. "A washed-up has-been who can't even talk straight anymore. This ain't your neighborhood, Tyson. These people came here to have fun, not listen to some punch-drunk bum cause trouble." The crowd fell silent. Even the slot machines seemed to quiet their electronic chatter. Mike stood perfectly motionless, his dark eyes locked on Romano's face. Somewhere deep in those eyes, something ancient and dangerous stirred, something that had once destroyed anyone foolish enough to challenge it in a boxing ring. Romano stepped closer, emboldened by his guards. And the growing audience. "You got a problem with how we run our casino?" Romano's voice echoed across the casino floor as he stepped into Mike's personal space, his 3 guards spreading out in a practiced formation. "I can smell the alcohol on you from here, Tyson. You're intoxicated and disturbing our customers." Mike hadn't touched a drop of alcohol, and everyone within hearing distance knew it. But Romano wasn't interested in truth. He was staging a performance. "Sir, I'm completely sober," Mike said calmly. "I was just helping Mrs. Walsh understand that she was being cheated." "Cheated?" Romano laughed loudly. "You hear this, folks? The punch-drunk fighter thinks our dealers are cheating." He spoke into his radio with theatrical authority. "Security to table 4. We have an intoxicated celebrity causing a disturbance." Dorothy stepped forward bravely. "He's not drunk. He was helping me because—" "Ma'am, please step back," Romano cut her off. "We'll handle this dangerous situation." Frank Morrison moved closer to Mike. "This is bullshit." "Mike was just another drunk," Romano announced. "Probably his drinking." "Buddy." 3 more security guards arrived, making 6 total surrounding Mike. The casino floor had gone silent except for the mechanical sounds of slot machines. Hundreds of customers watched the drama unfold, many recognizing the boxing legend being humiliated. "I'll leave peacefully," Mike offered, his voice steady despite the obvious setup. "Too late for that," Romano sneered. "You've already disrupted our customers and created a scene. We're going to make sure you get the help you need." The guards moved in formation, grabbing Mike's arms despite his lack of resistance. They marched him slowly through the main gaming floor, Romano orchestrating the spectacle with military precision. Every step was calculated for maximum humiliation. "Make way for the famous Mike Tyson," Romano called out. "Looks like too many." Hits to the head finally caught up with him. Customers pulled out phones, recording the legendary fighter's forced exit. Mike's face remained impassive, but his eyes cataloged every face, every detail. The guards pushed him past the blackjack tables, through the slot machine section, past the sports book where elderly veterans watched in shocked silence. Dorothy and Frank followed helplessly, security guards blocking any attempt to intervene. Mrs. Chen watched from her dealer's station, tears in her eyes as she witnessed the kind stranger's public degradation. The main entrance, Romano delivered his final humiliation. "Stay out, Iron Mike," he shouted loud enough for the entire casino to hear. "Your fighting days are over. Don't come back unless you want worse than this." The glass doors slammed shut behind Mike as he stood alone in the parking lot. Rain began to fall again, pattering against his expensive suit. Inside, customers whispered among themselves while Dorothy pressed her face against the glass, mouthing, "I'm sorry," through the rain-streaked window. Mike stood motionless for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Then he walked slowly to his rental car, his mind already working through the implications of what he'd witnessed. Mike sat in his rental car, rain drumming steadily on the windshield as he processed the evening's events. Instead of driving away in humiliation, he repositioned the vehicle to watch the casino's employee and delivery entrances. His boxing career had taught him patience. Sometimes the best strategy was to observe before striking. The casino's main floor buzzed with activity, but Mike focused on the areas customers never saw. He settled in for what might be a long night, his street instincts telling him Romano's operation ran deeper than simple blackjack cheating. Around 11 p.m., unmarked, trucks began arriving at the loading dock. Mike pulled out his phone, using its camera to photograph license plates and faces. The vehicles bore no casino logos, no delivery company markings, just plain white vans and black SUVs with tinted windows. Men in expensive suits emerged from the vehicles, their clothing inconsistent with typical casino suppliers. These weren't food service deliveries or linen trucks. The men wore gold jewelry that caught the parking lot lights, their movements nervous and urgent. Casino manager Carl Brennan appeared personally to oversee the operation. Mike had noticed him earlier during the confrontation, a well-dressed man in his 50s who'd whispered urgently to Romano. Now Brennan checked his watch repeatedly, speaking into his phone with obvious tension. The most suspicious activity involved heavy cases being moved under armed escort. Mike counted at least 8 cases, each requiring 2 men to carry. Through his telephoto lens, he captured images of the transfer, noting how the handlers treated the cases like they contained something far more valuable than casino supplies. Security was heavy but discreet. Men positioned themselves at strategic points around the loading area, their bulging jackets suggesting concealed weapons. These weren't casino security guards. They moved with military precision and scanned their surroundings like professionals. Expecting trouble, Mike noticed something else troubling. The men handling the money cases wore expensive watches, designer clothes, and jewelry that suggested incomes far beyond typical casino employees. Either Thunder Mountain paid remarkably well, or these people had additional income sources. Brennan's phone conversations grew increasingly animated as the night progressed. Mike couldn't hear the words, but the body language suggested pressure, deadlines, and possibly threats. At one point, Brennan gestured angrily toward the main casino, his expression suggesting the evening's confrontation had created unexpected problems. The operation concluded around 1 a.m. with military efficiency. Vehicles departed in different directions, Brennan conducting a final inspection of the loading area before disappearing back into the casino. Mike was preparing to leave when he spotted Dorothy Walsh emerging from a side entrance. The elderly woman looked around nervously before hurrying toward the parking area, clearly upset about something beyond the evening's blackjack incident. He watched her reach an old sedan and sit inside, making what appeared to be an urgent phone call. Her body language suggested fear, desperation, and something else, determination. Mike started his engine and drove slowly toward her position. Whatever Dorothy had witnessed inside the casino after his ejection, it had clearly shaken her. His protective instincts, already aroused by the evening's events, told him the elderly woman might need help. He parked nearby and approached her car, tapping gently on the passenger window. Dorothy Walsh looked up startled, then recognized Mike through the rain-streaked glass. She rolled down her window, her eyes red from crying. "Mr. Tyson, what are you still doing here?" "Watching," Mike said simply. "Mind if I ask why you stayed so late?" Dorothy glanced around the parking lot nervously before opening her passenger Door. Get in. We shouldn't talk out here. Mike slid into the old sedan, immediately noticing the interior's immaculate condition despite the car's age. Dorothy's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel. I stayed because I had to see something, she began. My husband Harold died 3 months ago. Heart attack, they said. But the night before he died, he told me never to trust anyone at this casino. He said he discovered something terrible. Mike remained silent, encouraging her to continue. Harold was an accountant for 40 years. Even in retirement, he noticed patterns, discrepancies. He started tracking the casino's published tribal payment reports against their actual gaming revenues. Her voice grew stronger. The numbers didn't match. Millions of dollars were missing. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small brass key. Harold hid evidence in a safety deposit box. He made me promise to only trust someone I was absolutely certain couldn't be bought. After watching you tonight, standing up for me against those bullies. She pressed the key into Mike's palm. I think you might be that person. Mike studied the key, feeling its weight. What kind of evidence? Financial records, photographs, recorded conversations. Harold documented everything systematically. He discovered the casino was stealing tribal revenue meant for education and healthcare programs. Dorothy's voice dropped to a whisper. And he wasn't the only one investigating. What do you mean? 3 other tribal members died in the past year after questioning casino operations. Car accidents, sudden heart attacks, a drowning. All ruled accidental or natural causes. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. Harold's last entry in his notebook said he was ready to present evidence to federal authorities. He died that night. Mike felt the familiar calm that had preceded his greatest boxing victories. The moment when everything became crystal clear. You think they killed him? I know they did. Dorothy turned to face him directly. Mr. Tyson, this isn't just about cheating at blackjack. Harold's evidence shows connections to organized crime, money laundering, systematic theft from an entire Native American nation. The people they're stealing from can't afford to fight back. The rain increased, drumming harder against the car's roof. Mike studied Dorothy's face in the parking lot's harsh lighting, seeing determination mixed with grief and fear. The safety deposit box is at Riverside Bank, Dorothy continued. Box 247. Harold said if anything happened to him, I should find someone who couldn't be corrupted, someone with enough strength to see this through. She managed a weak smile. I never imagined that person would be Mike Tyson. Mike closed his fingers around the key. Tomorrow evening, we'll examine Harold's evidence together. But first, I want you to stay with friends or family tonight. Don't go home alone. I'm not afraid of them anymore, Dorothy said firmly. Harold died for the truth. I won't dishonor his memory by running. Mike admired her courage, but he'd seen too much violence to underestimate criminals. Courage is smart, Dorothy. Recklessness gets good people killed. We'll meet tomorrow at Frank Morrison's house, 8 p.m. As Dorothy drove away, Mike sat alone in the parking lot, processing everything he'd learned. This wasn't about his personal humiliation anymore. An entire community was being systematically robbed by criminals. Willing to commit murder to protect their operation, Mike sat alone in the sterile quiet of Riverside Bank's safety deposit box room the next afternoon, Harold Walsh's key heavy in his palm. The bank employee had left him with the metal box and a promise of privacy. Whatever Harold had died trying to protect was about to be revealed. The box contained Harold's life work, a meticulous investigation that would have made any professional accountant proud. File folders organized by date, each document labeled and cross-referenced. Photographs, financial statements, handwritten notes in precise penmanship, and a detailed timeline that painted a picture of systematic criminal enterprise. Mike studied Harold's analysis of Thunder Mountain's gaming revenues versus reported tribal payments. The discrepancy was staggering. Approximately $200,000 monthly was being skimmed from profits meant for tribal education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Over 2 years, the theft totaled nearly $5 million. But Harold had discovered something far worse. Photographs showed Romano and Brennan meeting with men Mike recognized from FBI wanted posters, organized crime figures from 3 different families. The casino wasn't just stealing money. It was laundering criminal proceeds through tribal gaming operations that Harold's notes detailed the human cost with heartbreaking precision. The stolen money was supposed to fund a new elementary school for tribal children, a diabetes treatment center for elderly tribal members, and housing improvements for families living in substandard conditions. Instead, Romano's crew had diverted those funds to criminal enterprises. The most chilling document was Harold's final entry, dated the day before his death. Meeting with FBI field office tomorrow, 9 a.m. Agent Rebecca Martinez confirmed federal jurisdiction over tribal gaming violations. Have compiled evidence of RICO violations, money laundering, racketeering. Romano and Brennan connected to Castellino crime family operations in Albany, Buffalo, Syracuse. They're using tribal casinos to wash drug money, skimming legitimate profits for personal enrichment. Estimated total theft exceeds $15 million across 4 tribal casinos in 3 states. Below that, in Harold's careful handwriting, if something happens to me, Dorothy has the key. Evidence must reach honest federal authorities. The tribal children deserve their school. The elders deserve their health care. Someone must stop these criminals. Mike's hands clenched the document as he read Harold's final words. The gentle accountant had died for discovering the truth about a criminal enterprise that stretched far beyond Thunder Mountain Casino. That a timeline showed 5 suspicious deaths among tribal members who'd questioned casino operations. A Vietnam veteran named Robert Clearwater, who'd noticed missing funds from veteran benefit programs. Sarah Lightfoot, a teacher who'd asked why promised school funding never materialized. Joseph Running Bear, an elderly man who'd questioned why tribal healthcare remained underfunded despite casino profits. Harold had connected these deaths to specific dates when each person had scheduled meetings with tribal leaders or outside authorities. The pattern was unmistakable. Anyone who got too close to exposing the operation ended up dead. Mike placed the documents back in the box, his mind processing the implications. His public humiliation at the casino hadn't been random retaliation. It was a calculated move to discredit him before he could expose their crimes. Romano and Brennan had recognized the threat he represented and moved quickly to neutralize it. That evening, Mike arrived at Frank Morrison's modest home carrying Harold's evidence files. Dorothy and Frank waited in the living room, Frank's wife. Betty resting in the bedroom due to her diabetes complications. Mike spread the documents across Frank's kitchen table like a general planning battle strategy. The evidence was overwhelming, but the enemy was sophisticated and ruthless. We're not just dealing with cheating at cards, Mike told them, his voice carrying the gravity of what they faced. This is organized crime stealing from an entire nation of people, and they're willing to kill to protect it. The real fight was about to begin. Mike spent the next morning studying Harold's evidence like a boxer analyzing fight footage. Every document revealed new layers of the criminal enterprise, but evidence alone wouldn't be enough. They needed allies, legitimacy, and strategic leverage against an operation protected by corrupt law enforcement. That by afternoon, Mike had developed a plan that utilized his greatest asset. His celebrity status could open doors that remained closed to ordinary citizens. I'm going to the tribal council meeting tonight, Mike told Dorothy and Frank over coffee at Frank's kitchen table. Officially, I'm interested in supporting tribal causes. Unofficially, I'm looking for honest leadership. Dorothy spread Harold's financial documents across the table. These numbers show the tribal council should be receiving twice what they're actually getting. If the right person sees this, that's the gamble, Mike replied. We need someone inside the tribal government who can't be bought. That evening, Mike arrived at the Thunder Mountain Tribal Council building as an invited guest. His presence drew immediate attention. Several council members recognized the legendary boxer, and word spread quickly through the building. Joseph Blackhorse, a 72-year-old tribal elder with steel gray hair worn in a traditional braid, approached Mike during the meeting's break. Mr. Tyson, Joseph said, extending a weathered hand. I heard about your troubles at the casino. I also heard you were trying to help Dorothy Walsh. Mike studied the older man's face, noting the intelligence in his dark eyes and the bearing that suggested military service. You knew Harold? Harold was a good man. Asked too many questions for his own safety. Joseph glanced around, then leaned closer. Walk with me. They stepped outside into the cool October evening. Joseph's manner suggested a man accustomed to command and comfortable with dangerous conversations. How much do you know about our casino's finances, Mr. Tyson? Enough to know your people are being robbed. Joseph nodded grimly. 5 tribal members have died in 2 years after questioning casino operations. Harold was the 6th. He pulled out a folder from his jacket. I've been conducting my own investigation, but I lack evidence that would stand up in federal court. Mike, examine Joseph's documents. Comparisons between promised tribal revenue and actual payments, photographs of suspicious meetings, records of denied requests for school and healthcare funding. The casino reports paying us $400,000 monthly, Joseph explained. We receive $150,000. The missing money was supposed to build a new elementary school, fund a diabetes treatment center for our elders, improve housing for families living in trailers without heat. Who else knows about this? A few council members suspect, but Romano has people inside our government. Information shared in official meetings reaches the casino within hours. Joseph's voice hardened. My granddaughter is diabetic. She needs insulin we can't afford because criminals are stealing money meant for tribal health care. Mike felt the familiar calm that preceded his greatest fights. What do you need from me? Your voice carries weight. Your presence draws attention. If we're going to expose this operation, we need someone they can't simply eliminate. Joseph paused. But there's something else. Tommy Marcello, our tribal police officer, has been acting strangely. Either he's been compromised, or he's investigating on his own. Which do you think? Tommy's a good kid, but he's scared. His girlfriend works at the casino. That makes him vulnerable. Mike understood the implications immediately. Fear could make honest people do dishonest things, but it could also make them valuable allies if properly approached. The next morning, Mike walked into the modest tribal police station, a single-story building that served the Thunder Mountain Reservation. Tommy Marcello's office was cramped and cluttered, papers scattered across his desk like evidence of a man under pressure at T28. Tommy looked tired beyond his years. His dark hair was disheveled, his tribal police uniform wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. When Mike appeared in his doorway, Tommy's hand instinctively moved toward his service weapon. Relax, Officer Marcello. I just want to talk. Tommy's eyes darted nervously around the empty station. About what? About Thunder Mountain Casino. About Harold Walsh. About why a good cop looks like he hasn't slept in weeks. I don't know what you're talking about. Tommy's voice cracked. Slightly. If this is about your incident at the casino, I can't help you. Mike closed the office door and sat across from Tommy's desk. I'm not here about my incident. I'm here about yours. He placed one of Harold's financial documents on Tommy's desk, a comparison showing the massive discrepancy between reported casino revenues and actual tribal payments. Tommy stared at the document for a long moment, his hands trembling slightly. Where did you get this? Harold Walsh documented everything before they killed him. Mike's words were deliberately blunt. The question is, are you going to help us stop them, or keep pretending you don't see what's happening? Tommy's composure cracked completely. His shoulders sagged as months of pressure and fear finally overwhelmed him. You don't understand. They have people everywhere. My girlfriend Angela works at the casino. If they even suspect I'm talking to you, she'll lose her job. Or worse. What have you seen, Tommy? The young officer pulled out a locked desk drawer, revealing a hidden compartment containing USB drives and file folders. I've been documenting everything for 8 months. Security camera footage, incident reports, financial irregularities. But I didn't know what to do with it. Tommy connected a USB drive to his computer, showing Mike's surveillance footage from the casino's internal cameras. This is Romano personally adjusting slot machine payout percentages during overnight hours. Here's Brennan meeting with men I've identified as organized crime figures from Albany. The footage was damning. Clear evidence of criminal conspiracy and racketeering. Mike watched Romano manipulate gaming equipment while Brennan conducted business with known criminals. Why haven't you reported this? To who? Tommy's frustration exploded. Half the tribal council is afraid of Romano. The other half might be on his payroll. I filed incident reports about the suspicious deaths, but they were immediately transferred to outside jurisdiction and closed without investigation. Tommy showed Mike a stack of incident reports documenting the deaths of tribal members who'd questioned casino operations. Each report was stamped, transferred to federal authority, and marked case closed. Someone in federal law enforcement is protecting this operation, Tommy continued. I can't trust anyone outside the reservation, and I can't trust half the people on it. Mike studied the young officer's evidence. impressed by its thoroughness despite Tommy's fear. "What changed your mind about talking to me?" Angela came home, crying 2 nights ago. She works in casino accounting, and she overheard Brennan planning something big. They're accelerating their timeline, moving large amounts of money out of state. She thinks they're preparing to abandon the operation. Mike felt urgency crystallize in his chest. "How long do we have?" "Days, maybe a week." Tommy's voice steadied as he made his decision. "Mr. Tyson, I became a cop to protect my people. I've been failing them for 8 months because I was scared. If you're really going to stop this, I want to help." Mike stood, extending his hand to the young officer. "Then let's get to work. But first, we need to get Angela somewhere safe." Tommy gripped Mike's hand firmly. "What do you need me to do?" "Keep gathering evidence. Stay inside their operation." "And Tommy," Mike's voice carried the authority of someone who'd faced down killers before, "trust no one outside our circle until this is over." Saturday evening brought Thunder Mountain Casino's biggest crowd of the week. Mike sat in his rental car, watching the packed parking lot as families and couples streamed toward the neon-lit entrance. Perfect cover for what he was about to attempt. Dorothy sat at the same blackjack table where she'd been mistreated, this time carrying a hidden camera Tommy had provided from police equipment. Her nervous energy was masked by the determination of a woman fighting for her dead husband's honor. Frank positioned himself at the poker machines Harold had identified as rigged, documenting their manipulation patterns with careful notes and timestamps. His military training helped him observe systematically while appearing to be just another veteran trying his luck. Mike approached the main entrance at exactly 8 p.m. when the casino would be at peak capacity. His presence was immediately noticed. Customers recognized the distinctive silhouette, the confident walk, the unmistakable features that had graced countless magazine covers. "Holy shit, is that Mike Tyson?" someone whispered loudly. Within minutes, a crowd began forming. Phones appeared, cameras flashed, and the legendary boxer found himself surrounded by fans requesting autographs and photographs. Mike accommodated them graciously while positioning himself strategically near the blackjack tables. Derek Castellano noticed the commotion and alerted security, but Romano faced an impossible situation. Ejecting Mike again would look obviously corrupt, especially with hundreds of witnesses recording everything. Social media would explode with videos of Thunder Mountain Casino discriminating against a celebrity who was simply greeting fans. Mike began working the crowd, his voice carrying clearly across the gaming floor. "Beautiful casino you have here. I hope everyone's having fair games tonight." He emphasized the word fair with perfect timing. An elderly customer nearby spoke up. "Mr. Tyson, I've been playing here for months and never win anything. You think these machines are honest?" "Well," Mike replied loudly enough for surrounding tables to hear, "I recently met Harold Walsh's widow." Harold was an accountant who spent months documenting some very interesting patterns here. Romano appeared with 6 security guards, his face flushed with anger. But with cameras rolling and crowds gathering, he couldn't simply attack. Instead, he tried to control the narrative. "Mr. Tyson, you're welcome here as long as you follow our rules and don't disrupt other customers." "I'm just talking with friends," Mike replied smoothly. "Dorothy Walsh over there was telling me about her husband's investigation into casino financial irregularities. Very interesting accounting work." At her table, Dorothy was recording everything while the dealer became increasingly nervous. The hidden camera captured subtle cheating techniques that Harold had documented months earlier. Frank, meanwhile, documented systematic manipulation at the poker machines. The patterns were exactly as Harold had predicted, near-wins designed to encourage continued play, jackpots that never quite materialized, credits that disappeared during supposed malfunctions. Romano spoke urgently into his radio, summoning Carl Brennan from his office. The casino manager arrived looking harried, immediately recognizing the public relations disaster unfolding on his gaming floor. "Mr. Tyson," Brennan said with forced politeness, "perhaps we could discuss any concerns you have privately?" "No need for privacy," Mike replied. "I'm just enjoying conversations with other customers about their experiences. Very educational." A local news crew arrived, having been tipped off about Mike Tyson's presence and the allegations of elder abuse. The reporter immediately began interviewing customers about their experiences, creating exactly the kind of scrutiny Romano and Brennan couldn't afford. Brennan whispered urgently to Romano, who looked increasingly agitated as he realized they were trapped. They couldn't silence Mike without confirming every allegation against them, but his presence was drawing exactly the kind of attention their operation required to remain hidden. Mike continued greeting customers and discussing casino operations, while Dorothy and Frank gathered evidence under the cover of his celebrity distraction. The trap was working perfectly. Why the next morning, Thunder Mountain Casino was trending on social media. Videos of Mike Tyson discussing casino irregularities had been shared thousands of times, accompanied by first-hand accounts from elderly customers who felt validated by the legendary boxer's attention to their concerns. Local news stations picked up the story, framing it as Mike Tyson fights for tribal elder rights. The coverage portrayed Mike as a champion for vulnerable people, standing up against potential exploitation at a Native American casino. Mike watched the morning news from Frank's living room, satisfied with the pressure they'd created. But the real test came when official authorities responded to the media attention. By 10 a.m., New York State Gaming Commission investigators arrived at Thunder Mountain unannounced. Their white vans and official credentials forced Romano and Brennan into immediate crisis mode. Tommy called Mike from his police station. "It's chaos over here." Romano's crew worked all night removing equipment, shredding documents, and calling in favors. Brennan held emergency meetings with people who drove in from Albany and Buffalo. What kind of people? Expensive cars, out-of-state plates, the kind of men who make everyone nervous. Angela said the accounting department was ordered to prepare alternative books for inspection. Mike understood the implications. Romano's operation was sophisticated enough to maintain false records for exactly this situation. The Gaming Commission investigation might find carefully prepared evidence designed to exonerate the casino. Dorothy received threatening phone calls throughout the morning. Callers claiming to be concerned tribal members warned her about making trouble for the community and trusting outsiders who don't understand tribal business. Frank discovered he was being followed while walking his dog. A black SUV with tinted windows drove slowly past his house 3 times, the occupants clearly observing his movements and photographing his property. Despite the intimidation, Mike felt optimistic when Gaming Commission Chief Investigator Lieutenant Rebecca Martinez arrived with a full team that afternoon. Martinez appeared professional and thorough, taking Mike's concerns seriously and promising a comprehensive investigation. "Mr. Tyson, thank you for bringing these allegations to public attention," Martinez said during a brief press conference. Outside the casino, the Gaming Commission takes elder abuse very seriously, and we will investigate every claim thoroughly. Martinez's team spent hours interviewing customers, examining gaming equipment, and reviewing financial records. She personally met with Dorothy, accepting Harold's evidence officially and promising federal protection for all witnesses. "Mrs. Walsh, your husband's work will not be forgotten," Martinez assured her. "This investigation will determine if criminal charges are warranted." Romano and Brennan appeared to cooperate fully, providing unrestricted access to their facilities and expressing shock at the allegations. Romano even issued a public apology for his misunderstanding with Mike, claiming he'd been having a stressful week and hadn't recognized the boxing legend. The tribal council scheduled an emergency hearing to review casino operations, with Martinez promising federal support for any necessary changes. Local media reported the story as a victory for consumer protection and elder rights. That evening, Mike joined Dorothy, Frank, and Joseph Blackhorse at Frank's house to celebrate what appeared to be their victory against corruption. To Harold Walsh, Mike toasted, raising his coffee cup. His courage made this possible. To justice finally being served, Dorothy added, tears of relief in her eyes. Joseph remained thoughtful. "In my experience, when things seem too easy, they usually are." But Mike allowed himself to believe they'd won. Lieutenant Martinez seemed honest and competent. The evidence was overwhelming, and media attention had created public accountability that criminals couldn't ignore. For the first time since Harold's death, Dorothy smiled genuinely. Frank called his wife with good news about their financial security. Joseph began planning how recovered casino revenues would fund tribal programs. They had no idea they were celebrating their own trap point 3 days after Lieutenant Martinez's investigation began. Mike stood before a crowd of reporters outside Thunder Mountain Casino, vindication written across his weathered features. The Gaming Commission had worked with unprecedented speed and transparency, validating every concern he'd raised. The evidence provided by Harold Walsh and corroborated by recent investigations shows clear violations of gaming regulations, Martinez announced to the assembled media. We're implementing immediate oversight measures to protect elderly customers and ensure fair gaming practices. Romano and Brennan flanked Martinez, their expressions appropriately contrite. Romano had even issued a formal apology that morning, acknowledging communication failures and promising complete cooperation with all regulatory requirements. We take these allegations seriously, Brennan told reporters. Thunder Mountain Casino is committed to serving our tribal community and all customers with absolute integrity. Dorothy stood beside Mike, clutching a folder containing her husband's evidence that Martinez had officially entered into the commission's records. For the first time since Harold's death, she looked at peace. Harold would be so proud, she whispered to Mike. His work finally brought justice. Frank Morrison joined them, his wife Betty feeling well enough to attend thanks to insulin they could now afford through tribal healthcare improvements Martinez had ordered. I never thought I'd see the day when someone actually listened to people. Like us. The tribal council had scheduled a formal hearing for the following week, with Martinez promising federal support for any necessary changes to casino operations. Local media portrayed the story as a victory for consumer protection and elder rights, with Mike cast as the unlikely hero who'd stood up for the powerless. Joseph Blackhorse approached Mike as the press conference concluded. Your courage gave us our voice back, Mr. Tyson. The tribal council voted unanimously to nominate you for honorary tribal membership. Mike felt genuine satisfaction for the first time since his ejection from the casino. The system had worked exactly as it should. Evidence led to investigation. Investigation led to justice, and justice protected innocent people from exploitation. That evening, Mike returned to Thunder Mountain Casino as an honored guest. Martinez personally escorted him through the gaming floor, pointing out new safeguards designed to protect elderly customers. Dealers had been retrained, gaming equipment recalibrated, and customer service protocols completely revised. This is how law enforcement should work, Mike told Martinez as they observed the improved operations. Thank you for taking our concerns seriously. Citizens like you make our job possible, Martinez replied. When good people stand up for what's right, we can deliver justice. Mike played blackjack at Mrs. Chin's table, enjoying conversation with other customers who recognized him as their champion. The elderly dealer smiled genuinely for the first time since he'd met her, her nervousness replaced by obvious relief. Thank you, Mr. Tyson, she said quietly as he prepared to leave. You saved us all. Mike tipped her generously and walked toward the exit, feeling the deep satisfaction that came from using his fame for something meaningful. Justice had been served through proper channels, criminals had been held accountable, and vulnerable people were protected. He had no idea how completely he'd been played that Mike's phone rang at 6 a.m., jolting him from the first peaceful sleep he'd enjoyed in weeks. Tommy Marcello's voice crackled through the speaker, tight with panic and fear. Mr. Tyson, we need to meet. Now. Everything we thought we knew is wrong. An hour later, Mike sat across from Tommy at an abandoned gas station outside town, watching the young officer's hands shake as he lit his third cigarette in 10 minutes. Tommy, what's wrong? The investigation went perfectly. It was all fake. Tommy's words hit like physical blows. Martinez isn't investigating the casino. She's protecting it. Mike felt ice form in his stomach. What are you talking about? Tommy pulled out his phone, showing Mike surveillance footage from the tribal police station's security cameras. I recorded this 2 nights ago. Look at the timestamp. This is during Martinez's investigation. The grainy footage showed Martinez entering the casino through a service entrance at 2 a.m., hours after her official investigation had concluded. She met with Romano and Brennan in what appeared to be a private office, their body language suggesting conspiracy rather than law enforcement. I enhanced the audio, Tommy continued, connecting earbuds to his phone. Listen to this. Martinez's voice came through clearly. The investigation is proceeding exactly as planned. I've identified all the witnesses and evidence sources. The Tyson situation is contained. He believes we're on his side. Romano's laughter followed. Beautiful work, Rebecca. That punch-drunk fool handed us everything we needed to know about their operation. What about the Walsh woman and her evidence? All documented and scheduled for permanent resolution, Brennan's voice added. The tribal cop too. Clean sweep tomorrow night. Mike ripped out the earbuds, his mind reeling. How long has she been working with them? At least 2 years, maybe longer. Tommy showed Mike additional evidence, financial records indicating regular payments from casino accounts to a shell company Martinez controlled. She's been providing legal cover for their operation, making sure investigations disappear and witnesses stay silent. The full scope of their manipulation became clear. Martinez's investigation hadn't been designed to expose the casino's crimes. It was a sophisticated trap to identify everyone who posed a threat to their operation. They used me, Mike said, his voice carrying the cold fury that had once terrified heavyweight opponents. They used all of us. It gets worse. Tommy's hands trembled as he lit another cigarette. Angela overheard them planning simultaneous raids tonight. They're going to eliminate all the witnesses while making it look like protective custody or accidental deaths. Mike processed the timeline. Dorothy would be alone in her house, trusting that law enforcement was protecting her. Frank would be vulnerable, believing the threat had passed. Joseph Blackhorse would be unguarded, thinking justice had been served. What about you? Are you compromised? They're framing me for evidence tampering. Martinez planted materials in my office last night. Drugs, stolen casino chips, forged documents. When they find the evidence this morning, I'll be arrested and discredited. Tommy's voice cracked. Angela's already in hiding. Her supervisor told her not to come to work anymore. Mike understood the elegant cruelty of their plan. By appearing to validate the witnesses' concerns, Martinez had identified every person who could testify against the casino operation. Now they could eliminate those threats under the cover of legitimate law enforcement action. We have to warn everyone, Mike said, already reaching for his phone. No, Tommy grabbed his wrist. They're monitoring all communications now. Phone calls, emails, everything. If we try to warn people directly, we'll just confirm their locations. For the hit teams, Mike felt the familiar calm that preceded his most dangerous fights. The enemy had revealed themselves. The stakes were life and death, and innocent people were counting on him. Tommy, how many men does Romano have? At least 12 that I've seen, probably more. Tommy's voice steadied as he committed to their only option. But Mr. Tyson, these aren't just casino security guards. Martinez brought in federal resources. We're facing professional killers with government cover. Mike smiled grimly, an expression that had once struck fear into the hearts of the world's toughest fighters. Then we better get started. Mike raced through the dark streets toward Dorothy's house, Tommy's warning echoing in his mind. The dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m. If Martinez's timeline was accurate, the coordinated attacks would begin within minutes. Unmarked black SUVs surrounded Dorothy's modest home as Mike arrived. Men in tactical gear moved with professional precision, but something was wrong with the scene. These weren't arrest teams. They carried equipment more suitable for permanent solutions than protective custody. Mike parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, his boxing training helping him move silently through residential shadows. Through Dorothy's front window, he could see her sitting in her living room, apparently unaware of the danger closing around her. The attack began with military coordination. Men emerged from vehicles simultaneously, approaching the house from multiple angles. Mike heard the distinctive sound of accelerant being poured around the foundation. They planned to burn Dorothy alive and blame it on an electrical fire. Mike had perhaps 30 seconds before the flames started. He sprinted toward the house's rear entrance, his powerful legs covering ground with desperate speed. The first whoosh of igniting gasoline reached his ears as he shattered Dorothy's back door with his shoulder. Dorothy, fire. We have to go now. The elderly woman looked up in shock as smoke began filtering through the walls. Mike grabbed her arm, supporting her weight as they moved toward the shattered door. Orange flames licked at the windows, spreading with unnatural speed thanks to the accelerant. They escaped through the backyard as the front of the house erupted in flames. Mike could hear men shouting, apparently surprised by Dorothy's escape, but unable to pursue without revealing their involvement in the arson. My pictures. Dorothy sobbed as they reached Mike's car. Harold's photographs. Our wedding album will get justice for Harold, Mike promised, helping her into the passenger seat. But first we have to survive the night. As they drove away, Mike's phone buzzed with emergency alerts. Frank Morrison had been found beaten unconscious during his evening dog walk, rushed to the hospital with critical injuries. Tommy Marcello was in custody on evidence tampering charges, arrested during a raid that discovered planted evidence in his office. Joseph Blackhorse had survived a car accident when his vehicle was forced off the road, but he was hospitalized with serious injuries. The pattern was obvious: simultaneous attacks designed to eliminate or neutralize every witness who could testify against the casino operation. Mike's phone rang. An unknown number, but he answered anyway. "Mr. Tyson?" The voice was calm, professional. "This is Lieutenant Martinez. I'm afraid there's been a series of unfortunate incidents tonight involving your friends. We're implementing emergency protective measures." Protecting them from what? It appears someone doesn't want them testifying about casino operations. "We need to bring you and Mrs. Walsh into protective custody immediately for your own safety." Mike understood the elegant trap. Martinez was offering protection that would deliver them directly to their killers while maintaining the fiction of legitimate law enforcement operation. "Where do you want to meet?" Mike asked, his voice betraying nothing. "The tribal community center on Reservation Road. We have federal agents standing by to ensure your safety." Mike ended the call and looked at Dorothy, who was staring at her burning house in the rearview mirror. Everything she'd owned, every memory of her 52-year marriage, was turning to ash. "They're not done with us," he told her gently. "Martinez wants to meet for protective custody." Dorothy's eyes hardened with understanding. "It's a trap." "Yes, but it's also our only chance to end this." Mike's voice carried the cold determination that had once made him the most feared man in boxing. "If we run, they'll hunt us down one by one. If we fight, we might save everyone who's still alive." Dorothy straightened in her seat, her grief transforming into steel resolve. "Harold didn't die for nothing. What do we do?" Mike smiled grimly as he turned toward the tribal community center. "We spring their trap, but this time, we're ready for them." The tribal community center sat isolated on a remote section of reservation land, its parking lot empty except for several official-looking vehicles. Mike parked under a street light, ensuring his arrival would be clearly visible to anyone watching. "Remember," he told Dorothy quietly, "act scared but cooperative. Let them think we're helpless." Lieutenant Martinez emerged from the building, flanked by men in tactical gear, her expression projecting concerned authority. She approached Mike's car with measured steps, her hand resting casually near her weapon. "Mr. Tyson, Mrs. Walsh, thank you for coming. We know this has been a difficult night." Mike helped Dorothy from the car, both of them playing their roles perfectly. Dorothy clutched his arm like a frightened elderly woman seeking protection, while Mike projected the demeanor of someone grateful for law enforcement assistance. "Lieutenant, what's happening?" "Someone burned down Dorothy's house. Frank was attacked. We believe there's an organized effort to silence witnesses in the casino investigation," Martinez replied smoothly. "That's why we need to get you somewhere secure immediately." She gestured toward the community center. "Federal agents are waiting inside to debrief you and arrange long-term protection." Mike and Dorothy allowed themselves to be escorted into the building, their apparent compliance masking careful observation of their surroundings. The community center's main room had been cleared of furniture, replaced with folding chairs arranged like an interrogation setup. Vincent Romano emerged from a side office, no longer bothering to maintain his professional facade. His expensive suit was replaced by tactical gear, his demeanor completely predatory. Carl Brennan followed, carrying a briefcase that suggested this meeting involved more than simple intimidation. Well, Romano sneered. "The great Mike Tyson finally walks into our parlor." Martinez dropped her protective pretense completely. "Sit down, both of you. We have some things to discuss before we clean up this mess permanently." Additional men emerged from concealment, at least 8 armed professionals who moved with military precision. Mike counted exits, weapons, and tactical positions while maintaining his facade of shocked confusion. "I don't understand," he said, his voice carrying perfect bewilderment. Lieutenant Martinez, these are the men we're investigating. She's been protecting us for years, Brennan explained with obvious satisfaction. Rebecca's made sure troublemakers, like your friend Harold, never caused serious problems. Martinez pulled out a thick folder. We've been systematically stealing from multiple tribal casinos across 3 states for over 5 years. $53 million and counting, with legal protection provided by federal law enforcement. The scope of their operation was breathtaking. Not just Thunder Mountain, but tribal casinos from New York to Michigan, all being systematically robbed with government cover. The stolen money funded organized crime operations while denying tribal communities their rightful resources. Your investigation actually helped us, Romano continued. We identified every witness, every piece of evidence, every potential threat to our operation. Now we can relocate to other territories with clean slates. What about the people you've hurt? Dorothy asked, her voice trembling with controlled rage. Acceptable casualties, Martinez replied coldly. Harold Walsh, Robert Clearwater, Sarah Lightfoot, they chose to interfere with federal operations. The consequences were predictable. Mike processed the confession, memorizing every detail while calculating his chances against 8 armed professionals in an enclosed space. The odds were terrible, but the alternative was certain death for everyone who'd trusted him. You made one mistake, Brennan said, opening his briefcase to reveal restraints and what appeared to be execution equipment. You thought your celebrity status would protect you. Instead, it just made you a bigger target. Romano stepped closer, his confidence absolute. Tonight, Mike Tyson dies in a tragic accident while trying to save an elderly woman from unnamed attackers. Very heroic. The media will love the story. Mike looked at Dorothy, seeing her slight nod of readiness. They'd discussed this possibility during the drive. If capture was inevitable, they'd make their stand together. Just one more question, Mike said, his voice carrying the calm that had preceded every great victory of his boxing career. Did you really think it would be this easy? Romano's confident smile began to fade as he registered something dangerous in Mike's tone. Because if you did, Mike continued, rising from his chair with fluid grace, you obviously never studied my fights very carefully. The room erupted into chaos as Iron Mike Tyson reminded everyone present why legends never truly retire. Romano's men forced Mike and Dorothy into a concrete storage room in the community center's basement, the heavy door slamming shut with the finality of a coffin lid. A single bare bulb cast harsh shadows across maintenance supplies and cleaning equipment scattered throughout the windowless space. They'll move us before dawn, Mike said quietly, examining their prison with the methodical precision that had made him a champion. Can't risk keeping us here too long. Someone might notice the federal vehicles. Dorothy sat on an overturned bucket, her hands remarkably steady despite everything they'd endured. Harold always said the best accountants think 3 steps ahead. These criminals have been planning this for years. Mike knelt beside boxes of cleaning supplies, his mind cataloging potential weapons and escape routes. Bleach, ammonia, metal, tools, electrical equipment. In the right hands, maintenance supplies could become instruments of liberation. Dorothy, I need you to understand something. When we get out of here, and we will get out, it's going to get violent. These people murdered your husband, and they're planning to kill us. I can't hold back anymore. Harold was a gentle man, Dorothy replied, her voice carrying steel beneath the softness. But he'd want justice, not gentleness. Do what you have to do. Mike found what he was looking for, a heavy wrench, cleaning chemicals that could disable or disorient attackers, an electrical cord that could serve multiple purposes. His boxing career had taught him to fight with his hands, but his youth in Brooklyn had taught him to fight with anything available. They think they're dealing with some washed-up celebrity, Mike continued, methodically preparing improvised weapons. But they never studied what made me dangerous in the first place. It wasn't just power. It was the willingness to do whatever it took to win. Dorothy watched him work, seeing transformation from gentle giant to focused predator. What's the plan? They'll move us in the next few hours, probably to somewhere they can stage our deaths without witnesses. During the transfer, we'll have our best chance. Mike's voice carried the calm certainty that had preceded his greatest victories. They'll expect cooperation from a scared old woman and a past his prime fighter. Instead, They're going to get a war. Mike tested the weight of the wrench, his massive hands making the tool look like a toy. But those same hands had once generated knockout power that destroyed anyone foolish enough to stand in their way. Harold documented everything because he believed in justice, Mike said, meeting Dorothy's eyes directly. Tonight, we're going to deliver it. The sound of vehicles arriving outside filtered through the concrete walls. Mike positioned himself near the door, improvised weapons concealed but ready. Dorothy moved to the corner they discussed, prepared to stay clear of the violence about to unfold. Whatever happens, Mike whispered as footsteps approached their prison. Remember that your husband was a hero, and heroes deserve to be avenged. The door handle turned, and Mike Tyson prepared to remind everyone present why some legends should never be underestimated. Romano's voice echoed down the concrete stairway as three armed guards approached the storage room. Move them to the van. Make it look like a transfer for their own protection. The heavy door swung open, revealing the lead guard with tactical gear and confident arrogance. He expected to find a frightened elderly woman and a broken-down celebrity, ready to cooperate with their own execution. Instead, he found Iron Mike Tyson. The wrench caught the first guard across the temple with devastating precision, Mike's legendary hand speed unchanged by age. The man dropped instantly, his weapon clattering across concrete as his consciousness vanished. The second guard managed to raise his rifle before Mike's left hook. The same punch that had destroyed champions connected with his jaw. Bone cracked audibly as the guard's head snapped sideways, his body following in an unconscious heap. The third guard, seeing his partners eliminated in seconds, tried to retreat up the stairway while reaching for his radio. Mike caught him in the narrow hallway, where the confined space turned into perfect boxing range. Should have studied my fights, Mike growled, delivering a combination that would have been devastating in any heavyweight title bout. Body shot, uppercut, straight right. Each punch carrying decades of refined technique and righteous fury. The guard crumpled without firing a shot. Mike collected their weapons and communication equipment, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Dorothy emerged from the storage room, stepping carefully over the unconscious men. "Are they dead?" she asked, her voice clinical rather than horrified. "Unconscious, but they won't be a problem for a while." Mike handed her a radio. "We're not done yet." From the guards' communications, they learned Romano had 8 more men positioned throughout the building and a backup team at the casino. The timeline was accelerated. Other vehicles were en route to clean up loose ends and evacuate. The operation. "Dorothy, I need to get you somewhere safe before." "No." Her voice carried surprising authority. "They killed my husband, burned my home, destroyed my life. I'm not hiding while you finish this alone." Mike studied her determined expression, recognizing something he'd seen in mirror before his greatest fights, the look of someone who decided that victory mattered more than safety. "Then stay close and do exactly what I say." They moved through the community center like ghosts. Mike's boxing footwork adapted for tactical movement. He knew the building's layout from tribal council meetings, understanding sight lines and choke points that could turn superior numbers into disadvantages. The remaining guards were positioned to prevent escape, not expecting internal assault. Mike used their overconfidence against them, striking from shadows with combinations that ended fights before they began. Each encounter was surgical, quick, violent, decisive. Mike's legendary power, focused by decades of training and fueled by justice, proved overwhelming against men who'd mistaken celebrity for weakness. That be why the time Romano realized his security team wasn't responding to radio calls, Mike and Dorothy had fought their way to the main floor. Through the windows, Mike could see additional vehicles arriving, Martinez's backup team, ready to complete the night's bloody work. "Time to take this fight outside," Mike said, checking the captured weapons. "These bastards want to see what happens when you corner a legend. Let's show them." Dorothy gripped her radio with determination that would have made Harold proud. "What do we do?" Mike smiled with predatory satisfaction as he prepared to teach Romano's entire operation why legends earned their reputations through violence, not publicity. "We hunt." Mike sent Dorothy to safety at Frank Morrison's hospital, where armed guards, provided by honest tribal police, would protect her while he completed what needed to be done. The old warrior in him demanded personal resolution. Romano's crew had made it personal when they targeted innocent people, and personal debts required personal payment. Thunder Mountain Casino blazed with artificial daylight as Mike approached. Through the service areas, avoiding main entrances monitored by security cameras. Romano's remaining 8 men had retreated to their stronghold, but they'd chosen the wrong place to make their final stand. Mike knew every inch of the casino from his previous visits. More importantly, he understood the psychology of criminals under pressure. They'd barricade themselves in familiar territory, trusting technology and numbers to protect them from a single aging fighter, but they'd forgotten that technology could be turned against them. Mike accessed the casino's electrical systems through maintenance areas, systematically disabling security cameras and communication equipment. Years of observing the building's layout during his investigation paid dividends as he moved through service corridors like a ghost. The rigged slot machines Harold had identified became Mike's first targets. Using tools from the maintenance areas, he methodically sabotaged the equipment that had stolen thousands of dollars from elderly customers. Each destroyed machine represented justice for Frank Morrison, Dorothy Walsh, and countless other victims. Romano's hidden safes, documented in Harold's evidence, contained over $400,000 in skimmed casino profits. Mike liberated every dollar, preparing to return the money to its rightful owners, the tribal community and elderly customers who'd been systematically robbed. But destroying equipment and recovering money weren't enough. Romano's crew needed to understand that some people couldn't be intimidated, bought, or eliminated. Mike began psychological warfare that would have made his old trainers proud. He used the casino's intercom system to broadcast Romano's recorded confessions, letting his remaining men hear their boss admit to multiple murders and organized crime connections. Attention Romano's crew. Mike's voice echoed through the empty casino. Your boss just confessed to killing Harold Walsh, Robert Clearwater, and 5 other innocent people. Federal authorities have recordings of everything you're working for. Dead men. Paranoia spread through Romano's ranks as Mike's words found their target. These weren't loyal soldiers. They were hired criminals who'd flee the moment their personal safety was threatened. Mike picked off isolated guards using tactics learned in his hardest street fights. Each encounter was brief, violent, and decisive. He'd appear from shadows, neutralize threats with boxing combinations that ended resistance instantly, then vanish before backup could respond. The casino's elaborate security system became Mike's ally as he used knowledge gained from Tommy's surveillance footage. He knew which corridors had camera coverage, which areas provided concealment, which routes led to critical infrastructure. Romano's voice crackled over stolen radios, increasingly desperate as his crew reported equipment failures, missing guards, and systematic destruction of their operation. Find him. He's just one man. But Mike Tyson wasn't just one man. He was a legend with nothing left to lose, fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Every punch carried the weight of justice delayed. Every tactical move honored the memory of innocent victims. By 3 a.m., Romano's empire was crumbling. Half his crew had fled rather than face whatever was hunting them through the casino's corridors. Equipment worth millions had been systematically destroyed. Evidence of their crimes was being broadcast on every frequency. Mike's voice echoed through the casino one final time. Romano, this ends now. Face me like a man, or spend the rest of your life running from shadows. The gauntlet was thrown. Now it was time to see if the casino's security chief had any real courage beneath his expensive suits and borrowed authority. Joseph Blackhorse's voice crackled through the secure radio Tommy had provided, his words carrying strength despite his injuries from the staged car accident. Mr. Tyson, we're in position. 32 tribal members, including 8 veterans. We're ready to finish this. Mike smiled grimly as he surveyed the chaos inside Thunder Mountain Casino. Romano's operation was collapsing, but the man himself remained dangerous, cornered. Criminals fought with desperate violence that could still claim innocent lives. Joseph, keep your people outside until I give the all-clear. Romano's got professional killers in there, and I won't risk any more good people getting hurt. Tommy's voice joined the communication from his hidden position near the tribal police station. Federal agents are en route, real ones this time. Martinez's corruption has been exposed, and honest law enforcement is taking over the investigation. The young officer had worked miracles from hiding, using his evidence to contact untainted federal authorities who'd been investigating Martinez's suspicious case closures for months. The cavalry was coming, but Mike intended to finish this fight. Before they arrived, Frank Morrison's voice surprised everyone as it came through Dorothy's radio at the hospital. "Mike, Betty's awake and asking about you. The doctors say I'll be fine too. We're not giving up on this fight." Even injured, the old veterans had found ways to contribute. Frank had contacted other Vietnam veterans throughout the region, men who understood that sometimes justice required direct action. They were driving toward Thunder Mountain, ready to support however they could. Most surprising was the voice of Mrs. Chun, the elderly dealer who'd shown Mike such kindness during his first visit. "Mr. Tyson, the casino employees are with you. We've been documenting Romano's crimes for months, afraid to speak up. Now we have copies of everything: financial records, security footage, recorded conversations." Mike realized that his example had inspired courage throughout the community. People who'd been terrorized into silence were finding their voices, united by the simple principle that bullies needed to be stopped. "Angela's here too," Tommy added, his girlfriend's information proving crucial. She copied the complete financial records before they could destroy them. "We have evidence of theft from 12 different tribal casinos across 4 states." The scope of Romano's network was staggering, but so was the coalition forming to destroy it. Tribal members, veterans, honest law enforcement, casino employees, and elderly customers who'd been victimized, all united behind Mike's fight for justice. Dorothy's voice came through strongest of all, despite everything she'd endured. "Harold would be so proud of what you've started, Mike. This isn't just about our casino anymore. It's about proving that good people can still win when they stand together." Mike checked his weapons and prepared for the final confrontation. Romano and his remaining crew were barricaded in the casino's administrative offices, probably planning their escape routes and exit strategies. But Mike had something they'd never understand. He was fighting for people who mattered, people whose lives had meaning beyond personal profit. That gave him strength that couldn't be bought, intimidated, or defeated. "All right, everyone. Stay ready, stay safe, and remember, we're not just stopping criminals tonight. We're proving that legends never really retire, and neither does justice." Mike began his final approach toward Romano's position, knowing that this confrontation would determine whether innocent people lived in fear or criminals learned to fear the consequences of their actions. The last round was about to begin. Mike walked boldly through Thunder Mountain Casino's main entrance at peak evening hours, his arrival immediately triggering a cascade of recognition throughout the crowded gaming floor. Customers turned, phones appeared, and within minutes a crowd began forming around the legendary boxer. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mike announced, his distinctive voice carrying clearly across the casino floor, "I have something to say to Vincent Romano." Security cameras swiveled to track his movement as words spread like wildfire. Romano's remaining crew scrambled to respond, but Mike's celebrity status created an impossible situation. Hundreds of witnesses were now recording everything with their phones. Romano emerged from the administrative offices with 4 guards, his expensive suit replaced by tactical gear that revealed his true nature. But the crowd of customers made violence complicated, and Mike had planned it that way. "Romano," Mike's voice boomed across the gaming floor, "you've spent weeks terrorizing elderly people, murdering innocent tribal members, and stealing money meant for children's schools and healthcare. Time to settle this the old-fashioned way." The challenge hung in the air like electricity. Romano was trapped. He couldn't back down without looking weak to his crew, but he couldn't simply execute Mike with hundreds of witnesses streaming the confrontation live on social media. Local news crews arrived within minutes, having been alerted to Mike Tyson's presence at the controversial casino. Reporter vehicles lined the parking lot as camera crews rushed to capture whatever was about to unfold. "You hear that, folks?" Mike addressed the crowd directly. "This man has been stealing from Native American children and elderly people, then murdering anyone who tried to stop him. Tonight, justice gets served." Romano's face flushed with rage and embarrassment. His criminal empire was being exposed on live television, his reputation destroyed before hundreds of witnesses. The careful secrecy that had protected his operation for years was evaporating in real time. "Clear the floor," Romano shouted to his men. "Everyone out." But customers refused to leave. Mike's presence had transformed frightened victims into emboldened witnesses. Elderly gamblers who'd been systematically cheated stood their ground, finally having a champion willing to fight for them. No one leaves, Mike declared. Romano wants privacy to commit murder. We're going to give him publicity instead. Tommy. Marcelo appeared at the casino's perimeter with honest federal agents, ready to move in the moment Mike gave the signal. Joseph Blackhorse coordinated tribal members outside, ensuring no escape routes remained open. Dorothy's voice crackled through Mike's hidden radio. Harold's evidence is being broadcast on every news station. The whole world is watching. Romano realized his options had disappeared. Flight was impossible with law enforcement surrounding the building. Surrender meant life in prison for multiple murders. His only choice was the violence he'd always preferred, but now it would happen under media scrutiny that would expose everything. You want to do this the hard way, Tyson? Romano snarled, signaling his men to attack positions. Let's finish what we started. Mike smiled with predatory satisfaction as adrenaline flooded his system. Bring it on. The casino floor erupted as Romano's crew abandoned all pretense of legitimacy. 8 armed men positioned themselves throughout the gaming area while customers screamed and dove for cover behind slot machines and gaming tables. Everyone stay down, Mike shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. This will be over soon. Romano's men attacked with military coordination, believing sheer numbers would overwhelm even Mike Tyson. They'd studied his boxing career but failed to understand what made him truly dangerous: the controlled violence that had destroyed everyone foolish enough to challenge him. The first attacker came from Mike's left, swinging a tactical baton toward his head. Mike slipped the strike with footwork that hadn't deteriorated in 20 years, then delivered a left hook that would have been devastating in any heavyweight title fight. The man's jaw shattered audibly as he collapsed among scattered poker chips. 2 more guards attacked simultaneously from different angles, trying to use the casino's layout against him. Mike treated the space like a boxing ring where he controlled distance and timing, using blackjack tables as barriers while delivering combinations that ended fights instantly. A straight right hand sent the second attacker crashing through a row of slot machines, electricity sparking as the equipment shorted out. An uppercut lifted the third man completely off his feet before gravity slammed him onto a craps table. Romano himself proved more dangerous than his hired muscle. The security chief had genuine fighting skills, circling Mike with predatory patience while looking for openings. But Romano had never faced anyone with Mike's combination of power, speed, and tactical intelligence. You're finished, Romano, Mike said calmly, advancing with the measured pace that had intimidated champions. Your crew's beaten, your operations exposed, and justice is coming. Romano lunged with a knife, desperation making him reckless. Mike's defensive instincts, honed through decades of combat, allowed him to slip the blade while trapping Romano's arm. The counterattack was swift and brutal, a knee to the ribs followed by an elbow strike that dropped Romano to the gaming floor. The remaining guards tried to create crossfire, but Mike's movement through the casino was poetry in motion. He used roulette wheels for cover, gaming tables for elevation changes, and his legendary boxing combinations to eliminate threats. With surgical precision, each punch carried the weight of justice for Harold Walsh, Dorothy's burned home, Frank Morrison's beating, and every elderly customer who'd been systematically robbed. Mike wasn't just fighting for victory, he was delivering retribution for an entire community. Romano struggled to his feet, blood streaming from his nose and mouth. This isn't over, Tyson. Yes, it is, Mike replied, advancing with final purpose. The last combination was pure artistry: jab to set up distance, cross to snap Romano's head back, left hook to finish the job. Romano crumpled among the casino chips and scattered money. His criminal empire ended by the same hands that had once held heavyweight championships. Federal agents stormed through the entrance as Mike stood over the wreckage of Romano's crew. Tommy Marcello led the charge, his corruption charges dropped and his evidence proving decisive in exposing the entire operation. It's over, Mike announced to the cameras still rolling. Justice has been served. Federal agents swarmed thunder, mounting casino like antibodies attacking an infection, their badges gleaming under the harsh gaming floor lights. Agent Sarah Williams, the honest investigator who'd taken over after Martinez's arrest, surveyed the scene with professional satisfaction. Mr. Tyson, thank you for keeping these suspects alive for questioning, she said, watching paramedics treat Romano's crew. Your restraint will help us prosecute the entire network. Mike wiped blood from his knuckles with a casino towel, his legendary hands unmarked despite the violence they'd just delivered. There are more victims than criminals here, Agent Williams. They deserve justice, not revenge. Romano regained consciousness as federal medics treated his injuries, his eyes wide with the realization that his criminal empire had completely collapsed. Cameras captured his arrest, broadcasting the fall of a man who'd terrorized an entire community for years. Vincent Romano, you're under arrest for racketeering, murder, conspiracy, and violation of federal tribal sovereignty laws, Agent Williams announced for the rolling cameras. Carl Brennan and Lieutenant Rebecca Martinez are already in custody. The scope of their crimes was staggering. Agent Williams briefed Mike and the assembled media as evidence teams cataloged the operations. Remains: $53 million stolen from 12 tribal casinos across 4 states. 8 documented murders disguised as accidents. Systematic theft from programs meant to serve Native American children, elderly, and veterans. The money will be returned to its rightful owners, Williams promised Joseph Blackhorse, who'd arrived despite his injuries to witness justice finally being served. Every stolen dollar goes back to tribal education, healthcare, and community development. Dorothy Walsh stood beside Mike, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks as she watched Romano being loaded into a federal transport vehicle. Harold would be so proud, she whispered. His investigation finally brought them down. Frank Morrison arrived from the hospital against his doctor's orders, supported by his wife Betty and walking with determination that belied his recent beating. Mike, you did what the system couldn't do. You gave us our voices back. The recovered money was more than anyone had imagined. Hidden accounts, safe houses, and laundering operations had accumulated wealth stolen from tribal communities across multiple states. Children would finally get their promised schools, elderly tribal members would receive health care, and families would have decent housing. Tommy Marcello's evidence proved decisive in exposing the network's full scope. His months of secret documentation, combined with Harold's investigation and the courage of ordinary people who'd stood up to bullies, created an unbreakable case against organized crime. This is what happens when good people refuse to be victims, Mike told the assembled crowd of media and tribal members. One person's courage can inspire an entire community to fight back. Martinez's federal law enforcement career ended in handcuffs. In disgrace, her corruption spanning multiple jurisdictions and enabling years of criminal activity. Her arrest sent shockwaves through law enforcement agencies that had trusted her false investigations. As the last suspects were transported away, Mike surveyed the casino floor where he'd delivered justice with his own hands. Slot machines lay scattered like broken dreams, but they were dreams that had always been rigged anyway. The real victory wasn't in the violence. It was in the community of people who'd found courage to stand together against criminals who'd seemed untouchable. Justice had been served, and legends never really retire from protecting those who need defending. 3 months later, Mike Tyson walked through the transformed entrance of Thunder Mountain Casino on a warm spring evening. The neon signs remained, but everything else had changed completely. Gone were the predatory practices and systematic exploitation, replaced by honest gaming that served the community rather than criminals. Dorothy Walsh greeted him near the main entrance, her new position as customer advocate allowing her to protect elderly gamblers from the exploitation that had once thrived here. Harold's sacrifice was commemorated with a memorial plaque beside the door, in memory of Harold Walsh, whose courage exposed injustice and protected his community. Mr. Tyson, Dorothy said warmly, welcome back to our casino. The honest version. This time, the transformation was remarkable. Gaming equipment operated fairly, dealers treated customers with respect, and profits flowed to their intended destinations: tribal education, healthcare, and community development. The new elementary school was under construction, the diabetes treatment center had opened, and elderly tribal housing was being renovated. Frank Morrison approached from a blackjack table, his injuries healed and his wife Betty healthy thanks to comprehensive health care now funded by recovered casino revenues. Mike, good to see you again. Betty's insulin is covered now, and I actually won $20 playing honest poker. Mrs. Chun smiled broadly from her dealer station, her nervousness replaced by genuine job satisfaction. She dealt cards fairly. to customers who were treated with dignity rather than viewed as marks to be exploited. The fear that had once dominated the casino floor had been replaced by an atmosphere of honest entertainment. Joseph Blackhorse, now elected to tribal council. Leadership with overwhelming support, shook Mike's hand near the sports book. The FBI recovered every stolen dollar, he reported proudly. 68 million total, all returned to tribal communities across 4 states. Our children will have schools their grandparents could only dream of. Tommy Marcello, now leading an expanded tribal police force with federal cooperation and oversight, joined their conversation. Crime on the reservation has dropped 70% since Romano's arrest. Turns out most problems came from outside criminals, not our community. Mike played blackjack at the same table where his adventure had began, now operated with complete honesty and transparency. The elderly customers around him chatted comfortably, their social security checks safe from manipulation and their gaming experiences genuinely fair. As he prepared to leave, Mike noticed a disturbance near the slot machines. A young man in expensive clothes was aggressively pressuring an elderly woman, his voice carrying the arrogant tone Mike remembered too well from his first encounter with Derek Castellano. "Come on, Grandma, you're just wasting money on those small bets. Let me show you how to really play these machines." The elderly woman looked uncomfortable, clutching her small purse defensively. "I prefer to play my own way, thank you. Listen, lady, I know these machines better than you do. Trust me, you need to bet bigger to win anything." Mike stood slowly from his blackjack table, his movement catching the attention of nearby customers who recognized both his distinctive silhouette and the significance of what was about to happen. "Excuse me, young man," Mike said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had once commanded heavyweight championships, "but I think you need to show this lady some respect." The young man turned, his arrogant expression faltering as he recognized Mike Tyson approaching with purposeful calm. Around them, other customers stopped their games to watch, understanding they were witnessing something important. Mike smiled with the satisfaction of a man who'd found his true calling. Some people fought for money, others for fame. But legends fought for something more important. They fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. And legends never really retire from that kind of fight. If you like the story, please watch another story on our channel and subscribe to the channel.